Sarah Davey.
And I'm James Routledge.
And this is Books Unpacked.
Join us as we chat to people from across the publishing industry to unpack the life cycle of a book.
Pop the kettle on, get comfy, and we'll get started. Hi Vic, thanks so much for joining us. It's lovely to have you here for a bit of a chat about all things crime and Bay Tales. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to have a good chat with the pair of you.
So, just to get the ball rolling, Vic, we're going to briefly pretend that we don't know who you are. Can you give us a really super short introduction about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Vic Watson. I'm the organiser of Bay Tales, which is Whitley Bay's crime fiction festival. I'm also a creative writing tutor, and sometimes I work as an unofficial publicist for some writers.
Oh, I didn't know that bit.
Yeah, well, I did, so I've got some questions.
Yeah.
Lots of questions.
Go for it. I'm here for them.
So I suppose, well, the first thing is, I feel like a lot of these podcasts have started with, so we're going to talk about how we know each other, which makes it feel like it's a bit like nepotistic, but it's not. It's because the North's really friendly and small, so everyone who's doing book things knows each other pretty much.
Absolutely.
But also just generally in the writing world, those connections are really nice. You meet someone at an event, you keep that connection and you talk to them. And I think that's what's really nice about this whole thing. It's not like, oh, we're just interviewing our mates. It's like we've met these people who are all doing something they love in this world that we love. So why not talk to people who've got like those connections? And I think
Absolutely.
I first met you at a creative writing. I think the New Writing North sort of creative writing day.
I was wondering if that was the first time we'd met, but I think we'd followed each other on, I still
online.
call it Twitter. Yeah.
I still call it Twitter.
Good. And I've known James a long time.
It's
with
been a while
books.
now, yeah. I think
It has.
obviously it was through forum books.
Yeah.
But it's always pretty much been in an event guise or like an interviewing, chairing fashion, I think. I think the first time we met was maybe one of Anne Cleeve's first events in the bookshop, in the new bookshop when we moved into the chapel.
Gosh, was it that long ago? Yeah, okay.
So I think,
Yeah.
I mean, that might have been before we were fully out of lockdown.
Ah, no, you and I had met before that. We met at a charity interview I did with Anne in 2019 in North Shields.
Did we really? Oh, I can't remember
We
that.
did.
James.
At a charity called Meadowell Connected. It's like
Oh, yeah.
community centre.
Yeah. No, I do remember. I do remember.
Yes.
Yes. But I can't believe it
But
was that long ago, actually.
I know.
Yeah, that's fun.
I know, it's
But
crazy.
it is
But yeah,
just,
the
I mean,
chapel.
it's just really interesting how people's wires cross and we meet people further down the line. And also in like wearing different hats, like because of you doing slightly different roles over the years. I mean, can you tell us how you got into doing like the creative writing side of things?
I remember I used to write articles for a Newcastle United fanzine called True Faith when I was 15, which is a long time ago now. And then I stopped doing that because I like hit 18 and wanted to go out drinking and stuff. So, and then I went to uni a bit later than most people. I was 21 when I went to uni. I graduated 3 years later and went straight into a creative writing MA. And at the same time, I had entered a competition called Young Reviewer of the Year with our local newspaper, The Chronicle, which I subsequently won. And then when I graduated from the MA in 2010, the following year I became really, really poorly. I have an autoimmune disease, but at the time we didn't know what was the matter with me. And it gave me time to sort of, because I couldn't get out of bed some days, it gave me time to think about what I wanted to do. And writing was one thing, but I also really love, I'd always wanted to be a teacher from being like a little girl. So I then, a couple of years later, embarked on a teacher training degree, but I knew I wanted to merge the teaching with the creative writing, so I wanted to facilitate with adults. And so I've been doing that for 12 years now.
Wow.
And I've done that in in real life mainly, but then obviously in lockdown I was doing it virtually as well. So but I mean that is such a great joy, because before I had my own children, even though a lot of the people who came to my workshops are actually older than me, when you see them get published in anthologies or collections or bring their own books out, it's like I felt really proud, like a proud mum. It was really lovely.
Well, that's really nice. And I mean, I guess it's quite a unique position to really be in as kind of mentor, but also friend
Mm.
and supporter and a bit of a cheerleader for these people. You know, it's like when we were at the bookshop, you'd see people come in and be
Mm.
like, my book's just been published. And then, you know, you'd see maybe like a year down the line, it's actually hit the shelf. And like
Yeah.
how much fun like that whole experience is. So from from that and kind of working with people along those lines, I mean, when did you
Mm.
start doing author events?
Well, when I was poorly, I was blogging because again, pretty much the only thing I could do was read and write. So like I would write reviews of the books I'd read while I was in bed. And again, I'd joined Twitter just for a bit of sort of connection with people, I guess. Um, and when I'd been doing the creative writing tutoring, they wanted to put on events so that their family and friends could see what they've been writing and things like that. Then eventually we got a couple of anthologies printed. So we had launch events for those. And it was just building up those networks of chatting to people online. And I went to Harrogate for the first time in 2014.
Mhm.
And then in 2016, I'd read online about somebody running something called Noir at the Bar. And I was like, that sounds so cool. Would you consider doing it here? And he was like, no, I live in Glasgow, but you could do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, I couldn't. I really couldn't. It's like, yeah. Like it started in America. It's just spread. Everybody takes it on and makes it their own. You could totally do it. Loads of people, because you've been reviewing and stuff like that. And I was like, no, I don't do public speaking. I couldn't possibly. Um, and then like 3 months later, I was standing in the Town Hall pub presenting Noir at the Bar for the first time. And I remember this no word of a lie, my legs were shaking. Feel my heart. It was like one of those cartoons when the heart is thumping out of the chest. And I was thinking, why am I doing this? And every time I do it, it's not as bad as that, but I do think every time I do it, why am I doing this? But I've worked with libraries as well, North Tyneside Library mainly, but other ones as well. And they've asked me, would I get writers from Scotland to come and have a chat? And I've interviewed Anne with them before, and it's just really nice actually when like Mari Hannah is lovely, and they say Mari's going to do an event, she would like you to chair it, or Trevor would like to do it. It's nice that people obviously want me involved.
Yeah, well, you start making these kind of friendships, and like over
Yeah,
time, the more
for
events you
sure.
do, and the kind of easier it becomes, and the more comfortable you become.
Yeah.
And I guess you're, occasionally on the road with people, and you're
Mm,
not just doing it you know, in your local library, but you
mm,
might see people in slightly unexpected places as well. And actually, that's when you connect quite well. I think Harrogate is a really good example of that
mm.
kind of book community of people
Oh yeah.
that will just go back every year, and it becomes a bit more of a social, really, doesn't it?
It really is. I remember the first year, I think it was about 2012. I remember everyone talking about Harrogate and saying on Twitter, like, what's going down in Harrogate? And Mari Hannah saying, well, it's this crime festival. Everybody gets together for the weekend. And I was like, I'm going to go there one day. And I might as well have said at the time, I'll climb Kilimanjaro because I was so poorly. So to actually be able to go was quite amazing. But that first year, I did every panel going. I was like a really just SWAT. It was like
Yeah.
being back at school, like you weren't going to miss anything. They don't take a register. They don't know that you have them. So, um, but yeah, I really squeezed every moment out of that. And again, you meet people, and Mari was very welcoming that year because she knew it was my first time. And again, people that I'd met along the way were like, "Oh, it's your first time. Let me introduce you to so and so." And it's just lovely. And there are still people who I met that first year that I see year on year who greet you like an old friend because you are now an old friend, and it's lovely.
And how much of that, so because obviously a lot of what you do is kind of about the audience and the reader as well. And how
Mm.
much has been going to those festivals influenced what you've then gone on to do with sort of Bay Tales?
I never ever thought that I would do anything like Bay Tales. And so I think when it came to putting it all together in a real life setting, it was very much a case of um, where can we do it? Whitley Bay Playhouse. Okay. How many does that sit? 620. Okay. Right. um, and so it was, but I think what we've done quite well is we don't just appeal to the people who, and there are lots of lovely people who go to lots of crime festivals every year, and they'll go to Harrogate, they'll go to Crime Fest, they'll go to Bloody Scotland, Granite Noir, Newcastle Noir, of course, and all the other little ones all around the place, and bigger ones like Hay and Cheltenham. But we also get people from the local area who previously wouldn't have thought it was their thing. It might have seemed a bit too niche. I remember sort of having a stall at Living North's Fair 3 years ago when we were publicising the first one, and people saying, well, what's it all about? And I was saying, well, if you like crime fiction, it's a chance to meet the authors, hear them talk about their work, put some questions to them yourself, and get your book signed, things like that. And like I say, there are some people I think previously would maybe wouldn't travel out of the area to go to something like that, but because it's on their doorstep, they're really happy. And again, I see a lot of people saying, I'm just coming on my own, I don't know anyone. And you see people going out at lunchtime or at the end of the day having made new friends. And that to me is just like, it is the nicest feeling, because I think what I've always tried to do, whether it's with the creative writing or the festival or Noir at the Bar, is foster a community of people. And it's just the most heartwarming thing. It's lovely.
And now, I mean, you've done this. The Bay Tales obviously is carving its own sort of place in the crime fiction kind of calendar.
Yeah.
But having done Noir at the Bar, and you've got so many of these under your belt now,
Yeah.
I mean, that community has always been at its heart, right? And like you
Mm.
were a reader first and you went to
Mhm.
events first. And I
Yeah.
think that's really important. And I feel like you get that vibe when you go to Bay Tales. It's like it's organized by somebody who actually just really wants to hear what these people have to say. And actually you get that sort of, because we all like a good gossip, right? And like
For sure.
we do like to talk to these authors, but it does feel like you're just one of the audience as well, which is so nice.
I think what really annoys me about Bay Tales the most is I have never seen a panel at Bay Tales. And I'm
Yeah.
like, every year I get really excited, like, oh, guess who's coming next year? And then I see them. I like meet them in passing. And I'm like, thank you so much for coming. The end of interaction. But yeah, I think the reading thing is, it's a bit like the advice they give to people who want to be writers, is like, you need to read. First of all, you need to read. And I think the same should be done, or you should, if you want to set up an event of your own, you need to be a reader primarily, so that you know what you like and what you're hoping to achieve out of it. And I think it would almost be disingenuous for somebody who didn't like books to run an event like this, because how would they be able to do it, really?
Well, I think it comes across with some of these major corporate ones that
Mm,
there's a panel of people involved, and actually maybe they aren't all readers, or maybe they aren't all book people, and
mm.
actually they're doing it for the money. And obviously some of
I'm
these
definitely
festivals.
not doing it for that.
I was just like, hold on a minute now. Who's doing it for the money? Because we don't get money.
I know, I know. But then you look at these festivals that have such a passionate following, and a
Mm,
lot of the smaller festivals in particular, when they're run
mm.
by maybe like one or two people, or like an
Yeah,
incredibly
Jackie and
small team.
Francis are a great example of that at Newcastle Noir.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, when you hear Jackie just introducing panels, that enthusiasm comes across. And like you say, they're a small, it's Jackie and Francis organise it, and then their team of volunteers. But their enthusiasm, you know, they are people who care about their audience and their speakers. And that's great. But also, I would just like to ask a question. What is this money you talk of?
Well, I know, but like you mentioned Cheltenham, we were just
Yeah,
talking
fair
before we
play.
started, like,
Sponsorship, obviously, because I work for Book Festival. But again, there's like,
Yeah.
I've made the team 30% bigger than, there was only 2 people and I am the third person. It's not like, woohoo,
Nice.
it's not like there's lots of people.
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah.
only because of funding, etc., that we don't make money from
Mhm.
tickets. That's not enough to pay for everything, and
Yeah.
if it hadn't have been set up originally by someone who just loved reading and still
Yeah.
loves reading, then it would never happen and you wouldn't have the audience and all. And that, I suppose, things can turn into bigger things, can't they? That become a bit of a beast.
Mm.
I was just having a look at
Mm.
Cheltenham and I had no idea it was so big. It's massive. Like, it made us feel a bit sick at the thought of organising it. Like, oh my God. But then something like going to Newcastle or coming to Bay Tales or like, the New Writing North one day things,
Mm.
when you get it, you get that, the interaction and you meet other people who love it. And that is what it's all about. It's about, that's why we're here. We're just like books, man.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
love books.
Yeah.
I'm just here
Yeah.
for the books.
Aye.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
why crime? I mean, obviously crime is such a big thing. It's become even bigger, I'd say, over the last sort of
Mm.
10 years or whatever. But
Yeah.
if Bay Tales could have been anything, why is Bay Tales a crime festival?
It's really funny because when I embarked on my MA, I really just wanted to write what is derogatorily known as chick lit.
Mhm.
I just, that was what I wanted to write, a bit of fluffy romance. And then I got into this MA and I was like, I didn't realize I was such a dark-minded person, but I am. And started writing crime. And actually, prior to that, I remember being on holiday with my best friend and she was reading Harlan Coben. She's like, this is really good, you should read it. I was like, not my kind of thing at all. But around the same time, I remember I set out one summer, I think it was the year I finished my undergrad, to read all of the books on Richard and Judy's, their book club
Mhm.
thing that they do. I decided I wanted to read all of them that year. And one of the books on that list was Linwood Barclay's No Time for Goodbye.
Mhm.
Have you guys read it or not?
I haven't.
I've not.
No.
Oh my gosh. Just, oh my gosh. That is the book that turned me on to crime because I was just like, is this what people are talking about when they say crime fiction? Because I just thought it was like bloody murders and things. And I thought, I don't want to read like gory stuff.
Yeah.
And then I realized you can be ambitious and audacious and not know where things are going. And then I realized, obviously, the more I read it, like how many subgenres there are, how broad a church crime can be.
Yeah.
You can have at Noir at the Bar, we have like 10 to 12 readers, and you can have like a psychological thriller, a cozy crime, something that is a bit gory and not really my bag. You know, political stuff. Sarah Vaughan was at our first Bay Tales, and she wrote Anatomy of a Scandal and Reputation, and she is classed as crime. So I think once I read more broadly in crime, I realized how many different things were considered crime. I think because I set Bay Tales up with Simon Buick, I think we called it Bay Tales because we wanted to leave it open so that potentially we could do something outside of crime one day as well. But in all fairness, my contacts lie in the crime fiction world. The reviews that I was writing were mainly crime fiction.
Sure.
Noir at the Bar obviously is crime, which is why Bay Tales is what it is. But I do remember doing a virtual event because Bay Tales was started during lockdown. So we did like a magazine type show online via Zoom. And I remember interviewing Anne Cleves and us saying, you are going to do this in real life when like lockdown's lifted, aren't you?
Yeah.
And she gave me that look down the camera where you kind of go, I'm not saying no to her.
Can't say no to Anne, no.
Absolutely not. And there was a lady came to do Noir at the Bar for this year's Bay Tales, Laurie Raider Day, who's quite well known in America, and she's Anne's friend. And I think Anne basically had her arm up her back to come and do it. And she said on Twitter, you don't say no to Anne. And I was like, I have said this exact same thing for years. So yeah.
I know she comes across as so like lovely and gentle, but
Well,
really,
because she is, but she's got a core of steel, and that's why I like her.
I'm interested in not just obviously the customers' engagement with festivals, but actually it's the authors' engagement as well. And
Mm,
it's obviously the authors who you don't always get a say in, you know?
no.
So can you tell us a little bit about maybe how you deal with publishers, how you do a festival lineup, and also it's making these events work with what you're offered, right? Is that how it works?
Mm. Yeah, so in the first year, and when we were planning the first one, the model that we devised was we would ask publishers to sponsor a panel. So what's different to other festivals that I've been to is that each of our panels is one publisher, and then they pick their authors.
Mhm.
So next year we've got Pan Macmillan, have got Sarah Hillary, Tracy Whitwell, Ellery Lloyd, and it's going to be chaired by Steph McGovern, who has a book coming out with them next year as well. So basically, once we say, yes, we'd like you to sponsor a panel, and yes, you're happy to sponsor a panel, it's kind of out of my hands in terms of who they pick. I mean, I do always ask them for diverse voices.
Mhm.
Um, I also try and encourage them to get international writers, but obviously that costs some more money. So
Mhm.
I haven't been too lucky on that front so far, but I remain hopeful. Um, yeah, I do try to encourage diversity, and I also try to encourage them to have like a cohesion in their panel in terms of that they come up with a title and therefore everybody is able to talk on a certain topic. Um, and some of the titles we've had have been absolutely mad in terms of like, when you're like, let's try and pick out one common theme. They all feature houses and
Oh.
things like that. Um, but also what I think we do quite well at Bay Tales is to try and encourage like bring us a big name, but then also bring us a debut and a mid-lister. So our audience will probably come because X is speaking, but then they get there and this person's on a panel, but alongside them is a debut or a mid-lister who you might not have heard of before. And we start every show every year with our patrons pick. So Anne Cleves is our patron. And every year she gets to pick someone to come and have a chat with her for an hour. And so the first year she had Vaseem Khan, who wore a Vera hat on stage. I was led to believe because I wasn't there to see it, but I have seen pictures. Um, and Vaseem sold out, James, as you know, because you were there selling the books, but just every one of his titles that you had just disappeared.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. She's had Brian McGilloway, the Irish writer. She had Emma Flint this year, who
Mhm.
sold lots and lots and lots of books and was very, very
Yeah, I
happy.
bet she did. I mean, I love
Yeah,
obviously I love Emma's writing and I love the
me too.
idea that Anne gets a free pass. Yeah.
Yes,
You don't get a free pass, but I can get the free pass.
Yeah, yeah,
exactly right. I know my place.
yeah.
We're starting to learn about Anne.
Yeah, the crime writing mafia that is.
Oh no, oh, we're going to be able to publish this podcast now.
I was going to say, you can edit, right?
Yeah.
We love you, Anne.
We love you, Anne. Um, so I guess, yeah, I mean, what I, as a bookseller at this festival in particular, I mean, I think it's one of the best-selling festivals we do, or I used to do, as
Mm.
foreign books in the bound, and
Best-selling books.
best as in, yeah. So in
Yeah.
terms of
And
quantity,
tickets.
Ratio of books sold to number of people there, I think, is
yeah,
one of the highest.
absolutely, and it was always impressive, even from day one. Um,
Yeah.
And it's and but what I loved as well is the number of people that would come who'd never been to a book event before,
Mm.
and the fact that they were leaving with arms full of books was just magic,
Yeah.
And I was curious what kind of feedback you get from your audience and like how do they tell you if they enjoy it? I mean, obviously there's
Mm.
so many smiling faces leaving, but it must be kind of hard to judge.
I think the first year I was like so terrified that I don't remember seeing anybody's face. And I know people were there, but I don't really remember anything. And that first year we sent out a survey afterwards to people who'd bought tickets direct through us, and we got lovely written feedback. Since then, we keep getting nominated for really nice awards like North Tyneside Business Forum's Heart of the Community. We've been nominated for 2 years in a row. And so you can, if you find out you've been nominated for it, you can ask for the feedback, the nominations that people send in. And reading that is just like, it's possibly one of the best bits of the job. The things that people say, they acknowledge that like we work in tandem with local businesses to offer discounts and things like that. We do a charity raffle to raise money for local charities, so the RNLI and the Bay Food Bank. And it's just really nice that people recognise the work that goes in, but also kind of the stance we're trying to take in terms of boosting the community, and whether that's the book community or actual Whitley Bay's community as well. But I think what does it for me is the people that like I met live in North Fair who maybe wouldn't have necessarily come. But I said, oh, if you buy a ticket today, you can have a free book or something like that. Or I kind of talk them into it. And now they'll be coming in March, and they'll have been 4 years in a row. And then they've told their friends and told their relatives. And there's people coming up people come every year from Devon, from Yorkshire, from London, from Portsmouth, Scotland, and now we have international travellers joining us. So we had people from Sweden, Canada and America, and we did have people from Australia as well this year. And I think the fact that people are willing to travel such a long way to come to this one-day event in Whitley Bay is all the feedback I need, really, in terms of I know that people are going home, whether it's to London or Ireland or wherever in the world, and saying this is so good, you really should come. And the numbers are just expanding, and people are making the effort to come, and that's just, it tells me what I need to know, really, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, does that, obviously you need to be maintaining good relationships with publishers and things. I mean, is this the kind of stuff that needs to get fed back to them and kind of keep them happy for next year?
Yeah, I always like to send a thank you email, like maybe not the day after, but probably a couple of days after, to say thank you for being involved. Hope you are happy with how things have gone. Hope your authors were happy. And again, we always get lovely feedback from authors as well. And every year I do a reel of like tweets that people have put up about the kindest festival, the friendliest festival. I loved this. I did a run on the seafront, things like that. And publishers always seem really happy. It's got to the stage now, though. It's a one-day event. I don't think our audience really want it to be any bigger, and that's fine.
Right.
That's fine by me. But we've got, I don't want to say too much publisher interest, but I've got too much publisher interest. So I now have to ask publishers to pitch their ideas in advance. And then, so I do actually get a little bit more control now, because I get to pick who I want. And then if I can't, because I'm a terrible, terrible people pleaser, because I can't say yes to everyone despite wanting to, I then try and help out either by arranging an event later in the year or by having them on at one of the fringe festival events that we do now, Noir at the Bar, or we do a library event on the Sunday morning as well. So I do try to get as many authors in that weekend as I can. It's getting trickier though, because so many publishers want to be involved, which again is lush.
And do you think working with those publishers has become easier over time? Do you think it's less of a hard sell now? Do you feel like publishers' relationships with festivals have changed maybe slightly?
I certainly think publishers' relationships with our festival has changed, because when we were pitching in 2021, we did have one publisher say to us, why would anyone go to Whitley Bay for a book festival? And it was like, very rude. And you're like, okay, then don't. But now I don't have to go out and have these meetings at Harrogate or anywhere else, or send, not begging emails, but like, I don't know if you've heard about Bay Tales, but this is what we do, and you would be welcome to join us, and this is the setup. I don't have to do that now. I just have emails from publishers saying, we would really like to pitch so and so to you, and could you squeeze in X and Y? And yeah, I think our relationships have definitely changed in terms of I don't have to do the hard sell anymore, which is really nice because I'm not a salesperson at all.
But in that space of time, that's amazing. It's such a brilliant, it's the
Mm,
dream position to be in because it is so much work programming and coordinating
yeah,
all of that. So to
yeah.
have that already, but I'm guessing that from the work that you did on Newcastle Noir and then all the work you did over
Mm.
lockdown, you've built up that reputation. So you knew what you were doing, so it did work when you started off. But it's just in that space of time, honestly, it's so good.
I think facilitating events like interviewing authors for an hour is very, very different to setting up even a 1 day festival.
Mhm.
I have no events experience other than obviously interviewing people really, or maybe like running workshops.
Mm.
But to go in and go, yeah, we'll book that 620-seater venue and we'll do these. What is wrong with me? We'll do these five panels and we'll do a charity raffle, and then after the first year, say, and then we'll add these fringe events in as well. Yeah, why not? It'll be cracking. It'll be dead easy. I didn't think it would be dead easy, but it's certainly been a very steep learning curve.
Mhm.
But I've loved it, and I kind of feel like if 15-year-old me could see me doing this now, because it's not just the stuff on the day and booking the venue and booking the authors. It's like getting the designs done, getting marketing materials made up. It's merchandise and all of that sort of stuff. I wish I'd taken business studies at school. I really do. Just in terms of, people ask you stuff and I go, what's turnover? What's like, what is turnover? I know it now,
Yes,
but
obviously.
only very recently have I
Then,
heard, have I found out.
but then sometimes knowing kind of is what sets the fear in, isn't it? Knowing how
Yeah.
hard something can be can stop you doing it in a way, taking a leap like that. Maybe if you'd known, you might have gone, no. Because there is a part of you that thinks, why did it? Why? What am I doing? But you can't help yourself. You're doing it
Well, yeah,
because
when I just said to you, what is wrong with me? Like, how did I even think that we could do that? And yet we did. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it was just okay going in with a hope and a prayer.
I mean, you've proven that it was absolutely okay to do that, I
Yeah.
think. But also, I mean, what I'm interested in is now that you've done it or doing it and continuing to do it and planning ahead, when you go to other festivals now, I mean, do you look at them in a slightly different light? Are you able to kind of read the room a bit and sort of see how things are run and maybe where you would do it differently?
Do you know what? The only one I go to every year is Harrogate.
Mhm.
Um, I once in 2017 drove to Stirling and back for bloody Scotland in a day, and it made me very ill for several months because it was far too long a journey. I hadn't realised, again, doing something without realising it, I hadn't realised how far Stirling was.
Mhm.
And when I committed to doing it, I couldn't get any hotels or anything because I'd left it too late. So yes, I was very, very poorly. I'm not a big fan of, and I know there are lots of festivals that do this, where they run events side by side. So you have to
Mhm.
choose which ones you want to go to. So again, in terms of my experiences as a festival goer and as a reader, I knew that I liked not having to make a choice. Because if it was between like Anne Cleeves and Linwood Barclay, how do you choose between, it would be like asking me to choose my children. Which one do you like better? Well, I don't know. I can't answer that. So what I really didn't want to do is, because it would be an option for Bay Tales to run multiple venues and multiple panels at the same time, to squeeze those authors in. But I personally, because as a festival goer, I don't like that. As a festival organizer, I don't want to do that because I don't want to make my audience choose. I think the playhouse where we hold the event, because we have volunteers working with us and then they have their own staff, I like to think that the audience experience is pretty good in terms of logistics, being looked after, being shown to your seat and all that sort of stuff. I was at Harrogate this year. I think it's a lot bigger than when I went 10 years ago for the first time. I don't think I look through it through like a festival organiser's eyes. I think I'm just always really excited to be there and catching up with people and just like, do you want to go for a drink? Yeah, she'll go for a drink. She'll go for something to eat. Can I meet you for brunch? What about a coffee? Oh yeah, I should probably go to a panel as well. But yeah, no, I like seeing what's going on, but I think again it's just more as kind of an avid fan rather than seeing what other festivals are doing.
So how is everything looking for the next festival for 2025 Bay Tales? Is it sorted? Been
Yeah,
sorted?
yeah, totally sorted.
Brilliant.
I love it. We just announced our final author this week, so I think we've got 20 coming in 2025. So Anne has chosen the lovely William Shaw as her patron's pick.
Mhm.
So that's just a lovely way to start off. Then this is not the order, by the way, but I don't have that to hand, so I'm just going to mention the people I can remember when I remember them. So obviously I mentioned the Pan Macmillan panel earlier. Oh, Viper books are coming. We've got Janice Hallett, who wrote The Appeal.
Nice, yeah.
So I'm super excited about that. Orion, Mari Hannah, finally is going to be on the stage at Whitley Bay Playhouse. Finally. And then our closing event is with C.L. Taylor and Mark Billingham.
Mhm.
So we've got some super names, big sellers coming. But again, the lovely thing about Bay Tales is you might come for those guys, but then you might hear an author speak that you haven't heard before and think, you know what, that book sounds amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
And I think that the best thing about not just your festival, but actually festivals in
mm,
general, is
yeah,
just opening readers up to new books, right? And
absolutely.
because you're working with publishers ahead of time, you kind of get an idea. You're in like this really fortunate position where you get to kind of look ahead a bit, maybe even slightly further ahead than booksellers are and kind of maybe some libraries are and things. Um, I was just wondering, as a reader, how much fun is it to get to see ahead and see who's bringing out new books?
It is, I am like a child at Christmas every day of the year. Literally every day I get a catalogue through about this is what's coming through next. I've literally just had an email today from Simon and Schuster about spring next year.
Mhm.
And Joe Callahan has a new book coming out, and I am absolutely losing my mind. Um, so and also just being able to click into NetGalley and download advanced copies of things,
Mhm.
it's absolutely insane. It's, oh, honestly, again, if I could tell child me that I would get sent free books in the post,
It's the best.
oh, I could cry with joy. It's ridiculous. And I still spend far too much money on other books as well, but isn't that joyous?
Well, in
So
our
yeah, I mean,
publisher meetings yesterday for the festival, they were like, "Would you like us to send that one?" And I'm going, "Yes, yes, yes, please, send that one." Like, send me all the books, send them all.
it is. How could you possibly say no, though? It would be wrong to say no.
It'd be rude
These authors deserve to be read.
to do.
They absolutely do. So are you seeing any trends or anything interesting coming up next year that you think we should know about?
No, I'm not that far ahead. I've downloaded far too many things from NetGalley, so I am now desperately scrabbling to try and read them all and catch up. I will say though, we've talked a lot about crime, but I don't. This is a common misconception when people talk to me. I don't just read crime.
Mhm.
So, I tell you who I really love at the minute, Laura Pearson, who wrote The Before Life of Eliza Valentine, which is a new one, and The Last List of Mabel Beaumont. They're just proper heartwarming, lovely female friendship stories.
Mhm.
I just love her. And she's with an indie press called Boldwood Books, and she's flying high. But yeah, just for something different. I do love, and I actually had flu a couple of weeks ago, and I read Laura's latest book, Eliza Valentine, and I read it in like 2 days, but it was like a lovely hug, which is what I needed when I was in the throes of this horrible flu.
That's so nice. And
Oh, yeah.
also, it is exactly the opposite of what you're going to be diving into for March.
Yeah, yeah. But I couldn't deal with anyone being bludgeoned to death in this terrible, fragile state that I was in. So I was like, yes, I need a hug and a book. Thank you very much.
I can't remember
But
the
I
last
will
time I
say,
read a book that gave me a hug because I don't reach for that kind of thing, and I probably should. But maybe I should have a look at my pile and try and find something that's a bit more huggy than.
Laura Pearson. Honestly, but I think, and you guys all know this from book selling, there is a book for every occasion.
Mhm.
It's why our to
And
be read
like
piles are
even
so large because we never
absolutely.
know what the occasion is going to be and how we're going to feel when we need a book. So you've got to have 500 to choose from.
So are you two both mood readers? So do you literally pick your next read based on the mood you're feeling at the time or not?
Well, I've already got like a pile of books, but then I don't know which one I'm going to read next necessarily. So
Right.
I tend to have to, I don't know what the mood is, but I tend to have to read the first few pages of a few books till I know which one I'm going to be able to get. Just like I'll go to my to be read pile. This is how I do it. I'll say I need a new book. My husband goes, "Oh God, she needs a new book." So I go to my to be read pile and I'm like, "Okay, how am I feeling? What am I feeling like?" Because I read a lot of literary fiction and translated, right, what
Hmm.
do I need? And then I just go and I normally go through the first couple of pages to see if I can get into it. And one of them will be the right one. And that's what I do. Unless there's one I'm desperate to read next.
Mm,
Or I'm reading for like a panel or something, or if I'm chairing an event. Like I've got to read a book to
yeah.
chair an event in a few weeks. So I was like, oh, I want to get something in and finished before then. Uh, yeah, but that's normally what I do. Is that weird?
I couldn't do it.
So when I worked at the bookshop, I would probably have 5 or 6 books on at once.
Yeah.
And that was because I felt like I was reading for homework and trying to catch up a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And if there was like a brand new bestseller that everybody's talking about
Mm,
and I kind of needed to know a little bit about it, it doesn't necessarily mean I would read it cover to cover, right? But I need to get
mm,
a feel for it. So I would definitely start all of those kind of the bestsellers that I thought were maybe my kind of thing as well.
yeah.
Um, then I would be doing other kind of homework for like events. So
Mhm.
I'd always be reading something for like a new event coming up, even if, and actually especially if I wasn't chairing it, because I always liked being the backup person that has read
Yes,
it.
with the question.
Only other one in the room that probably has a question in their back pocket. That was
Yeah.
always my job. Um, so if I wasn't sharing something, I was the emergency person.
Nobody else has got a question,
Yeah.
basically.
When you ask
But
the audience.
sometimes you need one person to start it off,
Yeah, yeah.
and then they all feel a bit braver once one person's
That's what
absent,
it
and
is.
that's
And if that
ideal.
person's a plant, that's fine.
Oh, totally. Totally.
Someone from the
If
publisher.
that person's the publicist, that's totally cool too.
That's part of their job. Trust me, I know.
Well, what about you? How do you choose, Vic?
I just look at a bit like you, my to be read pile, and then if I see something, I think, oh, I saw somebody talking about that on Twitter. But I think I am a bit of a mood reader, so like I could read crime. Obviously, the majority of the books I've got are crime, but then if I'm not feeling it, like for example, when my dad passed away, I felt like I can't read any crime at the minute, and I read Convenience Store Woman, which
Lush.
was kind
Yeah.
of kind of unusual for me, but actually just what I needed.
Yeah.
And I also read a woman went mad in the supermarket today, which seems like an odd choice on reflection, but yeah, it did the trick. I think that was because it was short stories though.
Yeah.
I think that's my comfort thing. Not necessarily short
Mm,
stories, but definitely short fiction,
Yeah.
like
Like
yeah,
novellas or something.
yeah,
Sometimes those like Japanese
yeah.
translated
hmm,
comfy ones that you can sink into a bit. That's maybe my mood reading, I think, those
yeah,
kind of things, and I can gravitate to those a bit. But normally it's the kind of grisly weird stuff that also a bit of a mood read. If
Yeah.
I'm like, I
mm,
just need it's I also watch like a lot of film. So film and
Hmm.
books, between the two, that's kind of what I spend most of my time doing.
Same.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
like whatever I could just put on and read is the kind of book I would, sorry, put on and watch is the kind of
Yeah.
book that I
Yeah.
would read.
See, one of the issues I have is I'll quite often be like, right, I want to read something and I want to feel like I felt when I read this book here
Mhm.
on my shelf.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Mm.
well, what's going to give me? And sometimes I get a bit stuck. I think, well, what's going to give me that? How do I know? And the answer is just buy books all the time, so you'll have something. Just keep buying the books.
And
No
then
matter
you've
where
got
you
it for
buy them from, just
contingency.
buy the books.
Absolutely. I'm not going to argue with you, Sarah.
No,
Come on.
I know
It's
exactly.
me.
Vic, I wanted to, because I'm just aware of time. What I wanted to
Mm.
do is maybe bring us back to this idea of the life cycle of a book. And I guess
Mm.
festivals are a really unusual thing in that they kind of sit across a few of these different stages. I mean,
Yeah.
you yourself's obviously a reader. You're working with
Mm.
writers who are, I suppose, at various stages of that life cycle. You're also
Yeah.
working with publishers
Mm.
who are starting to talk about publicity and marketing. So you kind of touch in on those guys a little bit. And then
Mm.
obviously the big thing is putting on events and reaching audiences of readers. So
Yeah.
you're in quite a unique place to be able to probably talk on various stages of that. Um, as somebody who started off as a reader, looking at the kind of publishing world, is there a was there a part of the publishing world that you were most interested in finding out about? And having learned more about the industry, doing what you do now, is there anything that you still need to find out?
Oh, there's still loads I don't understand about. I have a lot of really close friends who are writers, um, and they talk about like earning out
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
things like that. And like I do understand the concept, but there's some stuff I am really they talk about things and I think I don't know what that means. And you think I really should know what that means because it's kind of my job. Um, but yeah, I think my biggest thing is whether it's a room of 10 people in a library or this year I had 500 over 500 bay tales. My main thing is connecting readers to writers, and that was the big thing in lockdown. Um, what although I'd been doing noir at the bar for like 4 years at that point, I was aware that people lost their book launches and their book events like
Mhm.
overnight when we went into lockdown. So what actually made me want to do it virtually was I knew quite a few debut writers that year, Trevor Wood being one of them.
Mhm.
Um, and it was like, oh, Waterston's might not be going ahead. It might be, it might not be, it might be. And I think it did go ahead, but I know that I didn't go because I had a baby at the time and I'm immunocompromised. And I was like, I just don't think I should go to this. And I think a lot of people didn't go because it was a couple of weeks before proper lockdown. So then I was like thinking, hey, these debut authors, so you've slaved away for this book 2, 3, 10, 20 years, who knows? You've got as far as getting it out into the world and the world shut down. And I just thought, oh, this is like a nightmare for people. And what virtual noir at the bar allowed us to do was like sort of transcend geographical boundaries. So previously, I would have been hosting an event in Harrogate on Newcastle to like 70 to 100 people. What we're seeing online was 300 people from all over the world joining in. So we did that for 22 weeks, I think, every Wednesday night. And it started off, I think we had about 50 or 60 people the first night, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the authors, again, as we were talking before, I was getting emails from publicists like so and so really wants to do this, so and so really wants to do this. And I actually managed to have Linwood Barclay on one night, which
Mhm.
for me was like mind-boggling because he is the man that got me interested in crime fiction. Um, and I think noir at the bar, or virtual noir at the bar, sorry, what that's really crystallized for me was the fact that I want to connect readers and writers. And that's what I want to keep doing with Bay Tales and with library events and just other bookish events generally, I think. Um, because I think it's a bit like if a tree falls over a forest and nobody's there hear it? Does it make a noise? If somebody writes a book but there's nobody there to read it, does it matter?
Mhm.
Yes, it does, because you shouldn't write for an audience. You should just write because you love writing. But this podcast is about an industry.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
just about writing for the fun of it or for the sake of it. And because we're talking about an industry, the industry is the readers, really, because that's who we're all working towards, isn't it?
Yeah, and the more we talk to people, we realize how large that industry is and how many people are involved. And yeah, obviously
Mind-boggling.
we need that author to communicate their message to
Yeah.
a reader. But with some of these big publishers, I mean, there might be a dozen or more or 100 people between that
Yeah.
writer and that reader,
Yeah.
And I think that's what's
Yeah.
such an eye-opener, and what's so important is actually is seeing the cogs in motion, to kind of link those people together, and obviously festivals and putting on events is a huge part of that.
It boggles my mind sometimes. I was having an email conversation the other day where I'd started off speaking to an editor, and I said I need some artwork for some marketing materials. And so then she'd copied in someone else and then said, can you ask so and so to do this? And literally by the end of the day, 12 people were involved in this chain about sending me some cover art.
Yeah.
And honestly, yeah, I've worked in and around this industry for quite a while now, in one capacity or another, and still quite frequently my mind is blown by, like you say, the corporate cogs.
Yeah.
It's incredible. But again, I think that's possibly because, and I don't want to sound, oh, we're just little old northerners or anything like that, but I think because we don't live in London and we don't see those cogs on a daily basis, and I think there are people like you, Sarah, who are putting on an amazing book festival, and there are 3 of you, and yet sometimes in publishers it takes, how many publishers does it take to email a cover over, for example?
It's like, even things as simple as wanting to find out if an author's got availability. Well, I have to email their publicist, and they have to ask the author, and then the author has to tell the publicist, who then tells me, and then and even that is exhausting. But
Yeah,
and that's quite small.
and I've had occasions where I've been told an author can appear, and I've printed leaflets and then had an email from the author saying nobody's asked me this. And this has happened. The leaflet printing happened once, because I will never make that mistake again. But just this year, I had 4 authors confirmed, and not one of them had been checked with by their publisher. Had said to me, I'm pitching these authors to you. I said, yeah, great, okay, you're in. And then because I'd learned from previous experience, emailed these people separately, and they all went, what? When is it? What have I been committed to? Oh, can you imagine?
Well, hopefully this year everybody is all sorted, and we're very excited because we're going to be there with the podcast.
Yeah,
It's
so
so
this is
exciting.
not necessarily by that point our first live podcast, because we are doing something
Intriguing.
fun in November. But it'll be the first time that we're kind of doing a behind the scenes podcast, which would be really interesting.
I mean, we don't know how we're going to do it yet, but we'll work that out when we get to it. Like, I won't know about November. Who knows how we'll do it, but we'll do it.
The
Can I ask you a
magic
question?
of podcasting, yeah.
Yes.
Do you have a bleep machine?
Well, we've got
for profanity.
James has got an editing finger.
Yeah.
So he can...
Because at the backstage at a festival, you might need a bleep machine.
Oh, it'll be fine. It's okay.
Not Bay Tales, obviously.
yeah, of course. No, of course not. But for the purposes of our audience and whoever that might be, we can leave in a few swears, I'm sure.
We're all grown-ups.
Fair enough. That's okay then.
So yeah, this has been brilliant. Thank you so much. And tickets on sale for Bay Tales, yes.
Yes, you go to baytales.com. We now have a shop where you can order your tickets via us. If you come direct to us, get the best seats in the house for the best price.
Lovely.
But they're selling quick, so don't hang about.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you learned something new like we always do.
Follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our Substack to be the first to hear more.
And you can find us in all the places you usually find your podcasts.
Until next time, keep reading.